everyone, welcome to this episode in the Katie Explains series. Today we're going to be talking about actually something I don't think comes up very often when we talk about learning bug bounties, and that's how to really take effective notes. So really there's two types of notes we take. The first one is when we read or watch something to gain information, and the second one is when we're actually hacking on a target. And today I'm going to be talking about both, as well as showing you some examples of some notes. Some of my notes, and also some of the community's notes that I thought was really good. So from people who submitted their notes, I must say, a while ago. This video, once again, very kindly sponsored by Integrity. In case you've missed it, they've actually kindly offered to sponsor some videos on my channel. If you're unaware of them, they're a bug bounty platform, so like HackerOne or BugCrowd. However, they're smaller and focus on European customers. But actually being a smaller platform has a lot of advantages. They're really active on social media, actively reply to hackers, always interacting with the community. And actually they have a really wide range of targets to look at, which you probably won't find in other platforms. Especially when you consider the amount of hackers is a lot smaller. Actually the amount of targets, there's a good amount, and there's some good ones to look at. One of my favourite things is the XSS challenges they run. So often if new XSS research comes out, Integrity will make a challenge for you and you can win prizes, but also you learn how to do new techniques that you wouldn't have like a CTF for. But for me, the most important thing is community focus. Now, one thing I really like about Integrity is that they're giving back to the community. They've invested in me as a creator, and they're investing in other creators, as well as letting us all make the content that we already make without pushing us to make focused content. I don't take having an advertiser lightly, but I really do like Integrity. I think they do amazing things for the bug bounty community. Now, if you're not already a member, you can sign up with the link on screen. That's go.integrity.com/Katie. A lot of you have already signed up, and I'm so happy that people have signed up and people are checking Integrity out. Because I've also heard you're finding your first bugs, you're bug hunting, and you're getting bounties, and that makes me so happy, and I'm so pleased for everybody who's hacking on Integrity, especially those finding their first bug. I love hearing your stories about finding your first bug, and it's really cool that you all have been so accepting of having a sponsor and actually signing up to what the sponsor offers, because it helps me invest in my channel. Like, a lot of people hated my microphone, so with the sponsorship I was able to get a new microphone set up. So I've got a lot of love for them. I really want you to give them a lot of love, sign up, and really I hope you find bugs, I hope you get bounties, because you know they provide something great and I'm really happy to work with them. But if you do find your first bug, please do send me stories. I love hearing it. It brightens my day. So now that that's over, let's talk about two types of notes. So there are two types of notes that we make, which I talked about at the start. But the first is the notes on things you read or you watch or you listen to, the kind of educational resources. And the second is the notes you take as you hack a target. Now I'm going to talk about these differently because really they're different types of notes and they have different reasons for existing. Because the notes on things you read, watch and listen, you really need to be on the ball thinking. Notes as you take or hack a target, you're going to be way more engaged in actually hacking the target than you are going to be in taking notes. And I think that's really important to highlight. So let's talk first about the two types of notes, and the first one is the notes on things you read, watch or listen. This is something I get a lot. I watch every one of your videos and I still can't find a bug. Honestly, I get this a lot. And there's really two ways to think about this question. The first is that finding bugs is hard and it's okay for it to take a long time. And if you're still struggling to find a bug and you watch my videos, sometimes, it does take a while. Some people get their first bug in 5 minutes because they just wander into one. Other people it takes 5 days. For some people it takes 5 weeks. For some it takes 5 months. Don't be ashamed if you can't find your first bug. I will say though, how much of the information that I talk about or how other people talk about are you actually absorbing and listening to? Because it's very tempting to listen to something passively, but we don't get all the info. So why is it really bad? When we just watch or read or listen to something, we're doing so passively. We're sitting there, not necessarily fully engaged with it, we're just listening to it. and we kind of zone out, right? We don't really capture all the information it's presenting. And sometimes this is great. You know, if you're watching a podcast, listening to a podcast, watching a YouTube video, you probably just want to relax. You're not necessarily watching like a entertainment YouTube video to learn something. You're watching it to be entertained, and that's fine. But when it comes to educational content, we really need to start engaging with it. So how do we stop being a passive listener? When we take notes, it's kind of tempting to just repeat what somebody said, right? And just write down everything. But actually, we should be thoughtfully taking notes. And there's two things notes should do. The first one is to record the information. Like if it's telling you an XSS is JavaScript and it's used to do whatever, you should be writing that down. But the second and more important one is to advance your understanding of a topic. So not just stopping at what someone is telling you, but linking that back. And the key to this is really good note taking. So I've got some tips here on how to create good note taking. The first is to use a template. When you use a template, you kind of set yourself up as all of your notes will, one, be the same. And two, you'll have like this consistency, which will make it easier to take notes. It will remove the kind of cognitive stress of just sitting in front of a blank page. And you should be in that, summarizing, paraphrasing, and quoting. So when we say summarize, we mean that you should talk or write down what something's about. When you paraphrase, it should be what something's about in your own words, so it should be your own understanding. And quote is when you take a direct quote, maybe a slide from something, and use that. So that's step one. Step one is create a template. Step two is to note down keywords and to keep a note of the keywords you use, because it will let you search related notes. If you use something like Notion, yeah, you have full text search, but it's quicker if, maybe you're using, regular text files to have some kind of keywords. If you're doing API hacking, you've watched all of my videos, you might have a few pages of notes and you might want to separate them by, okay, this is API, or this is API bugs, or this is specifically IDOR stuff. And you can easily search for related notes. And that's really important because you kind of want to create a web of knowledge of every idea is linked to everything else. And this is where I get to the kind of third point here, which is link your notes. Link your notes to a topic like API hacking or to your existing knowledge. You might want to add there, APIs are more common in mobile apps. And then you might add that to your current knowledge and say, mobile apps, we can use an emulator, or we can set it up with a real device. You're kind of then not stopping at, I understand this, but I understand this in the context of my work, essentially. And you should read, watch, listen twice. The first to get a general idea of what something's about, and the second to really dive into those details. So you might first watch a presentation, like a conference talk, while it's being recorded, and you might make some general notes about what you find interesting. Then you re-watch it to really pick up, the specific commands they use, or the specific tools, or ask questions about it, or come up with new questions. And questioning is actually a really important part of note-taking. You can't just assume somebody is correct because they're sitting and telling you something. You should try it out for yourself, read more sources, ask people. You should watch something, come up with questions, see if it answers that question, and if it doesn't, then find something else that answers that question. If you don't think it's correct, that's even more important, because if you don't think something's correct, then you are able to really advance your thinking. So, one thing I've mentioned, creating a template. What format template should you use? And this part's really up to you. Some people prefer visual notes, some people prefer writing. I will have a different template than you, and that's okay. There's no prescribed format. However, I will show you how my template works. Right. This is a mind map, and don't worry if you can't read it because it isn't important, because I'm going to highlight it. So this here is what I'm watching. In this case, I was reading some slides, which is attacking secondary context in web applications. So I have from here these 5 options. So here we have general information, so that's a link to it, keywords, Further investigation here says, okay, now I've watched it, what more do I want to learn? The impact of it is, what makes it important? Why should I watch it? And the gaps are, what questions are left unanswered? What don't I know? And we can see over here that I have actually got questions that don't have an answer. So that might be a gap in my knowledge, and that's what I have to look up next. So I've got, from this general information, I've got whatever is in further investigation and gaps to look up more. And we've got some keywords here as well. So general information really is a kind of about of this presentation. And it's something I can look at quite quickly to figure out where to go next. And that's really important when you're learning something, is to say, okay, now I've watched this, what do I do next? So the next one up here is summarize. Now this is a summary of the talk. Here we have the key message. So what is the point of this talk? Why am I listening to it? The background, so I might not know this, so I might want to do some research on that bit. And then these two are the problem and then the solution. Now this is really important when you're taking notes, is to note down, okay, what is the problem that someone is trying to solve and what's the solution? And then the result, so what did it work, what happened? And here, in here you can't really see, but this is a collapse node, which has more information on the solution in a more technical way. So when I fill it out, the first thing I do on my first read is I fill out these sections here. So these are the first things I fill out because they're the ones that is kind of the general information about a talk. So that's step one. Step two is over here. So the next thing I do once I've read something once is I write questions. So once I've watched it and I have a general idea of what it's about, I'll sit there and be like, okay, what do I want to know? So like, what is a secondary context? And therefore, what's a first context? What's the difference? What should I prioritize? Are older attacks worth doing? How do you know an API is there? So the first thing I do is I really ask these questions and I write them down. And then on my second watch, I'm then doing two things. One is that I'm attempting to answer these questions from the talk itself. Now, some of them will be left unanswered, like this one's here, which says, that's what questions will you have and how does this resource respond? So some of them I might say, okay, are older attacks like SQL injection even worth trying? This is not a great answer. Maybe I might want to look more into that. And that gives me my kind of further investigation over here. So the next one is really answer questions. And then step 3 is investigate. Now investigate is really where I record all new information. So all of this is stuff I didn't know. Or stuff that I wasn't sure about. And this is kind of my way of recording what I didn't know and what I'm actually learning. So I've got some little notes here. So sometimes I'll have, like, in here will be a big block of text, for example, of my thoughts. Here we've got, like, control characters that I perhaps didn't know. I still have things like questions here. And over here, I might, this is quite a small question, which is, why does X return different headers than Y? But actually, that might not be appropriate for questions, so I might just add it there. And then I've also got like information that kind of connects it to what I'm doing. So this is how I found a bug on one of my other targets. And again, we're seeing, like, I posted an example in here, which is just from the slides just pasted in. And I'm sort of, when I'm doing this, I'm reorganizing it. I might move certain things around here. I've just kind of grouped a lot of these notes under common issues. But yeah, so that's step 3. And it's really just record new information. Now up here we have step 4. And step 4 is to connect it to what I already know and what my knowledge is already. So, I found it interesting. I can connect it to what I know about Laravel here by talking about how routing works. I've got some notes here that are quite important where I'm talking about IDORs and business logic attacks. And yeah, so that is really how I take notes. Now you won't necessarily take notes like I do. Like, I did a degree. I realised during my degree note taking is particularly important, but you're not going to take notes in the same way I am. But this is how I do it. But I think if you want to kind of replicate what I'm doing, the really important things is the investigate, record new information, and connect it to what you already know. If you take one thing from this whole talk, I want you to connect information and investigate it. Don't just stop at watching a video. Write down what new things you've learned and how that links to your previous knowledge, and that's really important. So now I've done ranting about that, let's talk about notes you take as you hack a target. So what notes should you be taking? Now, the thing about note taking is you should give yourself the best possible chance of following an old thought process. Because primarily what you do is you'll just leave the notes on there about what endpoints you were hitting and what you tried. And you really don't want to come to it the next day and realise, for goodness sake, now I can't remember what I did yesterday. And sometimes you might, stop on a target because you're frustrated and try something else, but you eventually want to kind of go back and look at a target again. So you really need to get the best possible chance at following an old thought process. And some people take really organised notes. Some people have beautiful notes, and I've used them as an example, but other people don't, and that's me. So this was when I was doing a CTF. And here I'm kind of recording what I'm kind of thinking. So here I'm talking, I can change the attachment ID to another ID and get the same text from two files. I'm pretty sure it's an MD5 hash or a UUID. No luck changing the file name or flag. And here I've also got some code. This was what the query I was running was. So actually, I can kind of follow this thought process, but it's not very detailed. It's not like I've written down every API endpoint, right? Whatever you do, you should be recording basic details though. Domains, subdomains, what an application or endpoint does. So let's talk more about what we should record. The first thing is the scope. Whatever the domains or subdomains a target has, whatever you're hacking on should be kind of your first priority. The next one is anything interesting. You've got to highlight those interesting endpoints, maybe interesting APIs, interesting links, so you can come back to them, because you don't want to think, oh, that's interesting, and then never come back to it because you've forgotten. The next one is your thought process. What were you working on? What was working? What wasn't working? So really you can go back to it at a later date, even if that might be a few months away. Going back to look at a target that you were struggling on, really you can then look back at what you already tried so you're not repeating it. And the next one is any bugs you find. Even if you report them formally, you should still keep a record of what you did, how you did it, why you think it worked, because that will then inform you what you can do for another bug. Especially when you start to get bugs, you should always be keeping track of them on your note taking, because you want to be able to replicate them essentially. Checklists. So a lot of people use checklists. You can't just use checklists are not notes, but they're really useful for keeping you on track. So I recommend using checklists as long as you're also taking notes. And I personally use them for testing for vulnerabilities methodologically in order. So I'll go, okay, this endpoint, tested. This endpoint, tested. And here are the results. So it didn't work, and these are NAs. And this is my link to it. I'll put it in the description as well. But you can use checklists. And a lot of people do use checklists, especially for recon. Right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you some other people's notes. Because my notes are not very good, but other people do way better notes. So this is by Abdul, which is at Moody Abdul on Twitter. He sent this as an example of his recon, or his notes. So he's got a kind of checklist here of choose a target, read the policy, start recon. He's then got a find subdomains, and a checklist here. So he's done this already. This is done. And he has, check this one, 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 etc. And you can see he's also done it here, and he hasn't finished with Google yet. Now, this is for a specific target, obviously. So he's on his target kind of mind map here. One of his things is doing the recon, and that's a kind of checklist style. I would assume these kind of more over here would be likely other things about the target, every single subdomain, for example. And if you're a visual person, mind maps can be great for really visualizing data. You can paste in screenshots, you can copy and code, you have quite a lot of options that you can do to make a really good looking mind map, and it's pleasant to view and to look at. Here, next one we have Patrick Yadav. God, I've really messed that one up. Which is Patrick Y99667. There we go. And he's got a very similar one here where he's got some templates. There are some notes in here. Find all the subdomains and how to use them. Specifically here we have the exact commands, as well as, a checklist of what he needs to run. So not only do we have subdomain enumerations, we have manual recon, bugs on register feature, bugs on login, unauthenticated bugs. So here is where he's really going to be checking for bugs and writing notes. And again, we have password reset, two-factor, CSRF calls, and this is a kind of closer to a more checklist version, but it's great as well. It's fantastic. You won't get many people showing you their actual bug bounty notes. Next one here is Alan, who uses my personal favourite, which is Notion. The next two all use Notion. Checklists, so got Google, again, checking them off as he manages a target and does it. And has some information here about how to make stuff work and what works and stuff like that. So again, checklist style. Can't just use checklists, you also have to take real notes. I suspect the real notes are not being shown on Twitter though. And then this is Code Ninja. So Code Ninja also uses Notion. So here we have a kind of more standard version. This is his kind of checklist he's got out. So he's got targets, forward, HackerOne public. He's got scope rules policy, responses, in scope, to do, domains and vulnerabilities. Also a reading list. So he's got his target lists and forward. And when he goes into forward, we can see the scope, to do, domains, vulnerabilities. I should probably clear that actually. Erase a link. And when you go to InScope, we can see that, he's got this kind of, each domain is then sorted by what it is. We've got Android Play Store ones, iOS ones, hardware IoT, and also the maximum severity bug that can be submitted. And if we look at then the to-do, we can then see, again, a list of what to focus on. So vulnerabilities, recon, again, it's just a simple checklist, what scopes he's actually approached, and what the vulnerability focus is. I'm not sure what that is specifically. So this is a really cool way to do it. Again, we're looking at to-do lists. You can't just have to-do lists, you also have to take real notes, but they can be really great ways to make sure you follow the same thing. Right, here are my notes, and as you can see, they're all oranged out. And why are they oranged out? Because they have confidential information inside of them. But some interesting stuff here. I talk about race conditions, so I've got some notes on how to do a race condition because I think I found one. So I've got some quick notes on, what to do, what tools to use, etc. Here is a list of endpoints, and here's another list of endpoints. Because what I do is I just paste in all the interesting endpoints and write a little note about what they do. A table here of usernames and passwords. Another username and password for maybe a different service. And again, this all has information. Important thing I noted here is user ID. Just if I'm managing two accounts, it can really help when testing for IDORs. But yeah, so I'd love to show my notes, but most of it is confidential. So I can't really show it. It's mainly just, literally, it's just a list of endpoints because that's how I like to work. But yeah, there's loads of different ways of taking notes on a target. As long as you're able to follow your own thought process, they're good notes. And as long as you're actually noting down, what something does and what bugs you're looking for and how to find them, you're good. Right, so that's the end of the talk. I hope you found that useful or interesting. If you've got a different note-taking system, why not show me? I'd be really interested to see what your system looks like. I really love note-taking. I think it's a super interesting thing to do. I know, very boring, but I'm a big fan of taking really useful notes. So I'd love to see what other people have, and I can share them as well. So thank you again to Integrity for sponsoring my video. My link is on screen. It's go.integrity.com/Katie. You can sign up there. You can start hacking. It'll be fun. So just go and check it out. So with that, thank you very much for watching. I will see you all next time.